Ladies and gentlemen, the amateur sommelier is back with the next wine lecture that, unfortunately, in OBS, the PowerPoint just overtook my entire screen and blocked out my face cam, so unfortunately I'm going to have to go back to the old well of recording for this. And the reason for this particular wine lecture is because a couple of weeks ago, I saw an article that said there was this E-Tongue and E-Nose technology analyzers that were able to determine the quality of wine. And so that got me very fascinated and very terrifying, because if analyzers can replace me, I'm doomed. So, we have some objectives, everybody. We're going to explain what an E-Tongue and an E-Nose is. I'm going to describe the type of technology for said E-Tongue and E-Nose, and then finally determine if the E-Tongue and E-Nose are basically going to put me out of a job. Which would be really unfortunate, because I like it when people watch my videos of wine tastings and then leave likes and subscribe, you know. So, let's begin. What is an E-Tongue? It's short for an electronic tongue. That's what the E stands for. Also in the E-Nose, the electronic nose. The electronic tongue specifically is used to study and what we call, quote, fingerprint, what's called the organoleptic property of taste. So wine is made up of a whole bunch of chemical compounds, and, you know, they're all organic because we're using grapes that were grown in the ground and fermenting them with yeasts, and we're hoping that no bacteria gets in there. There's a lot of organic chemistry going on in those time frames, from the actual fruit itself, the grape skin, if it's going to be a red, all of these other miscellaneous side reactions that become the wine that which we love to drink. So, there are electrochemical sensors. They react with specific chemicals to produce a signal, even though these sensors are non-specific and have a lot of cross-sensitivity between compounds. And it has to use multivariate analysis for the simple reason that we're dealing with, I think when I did my research, it was like hundreds of compounds in wine. It's insane. It's ridiculous. I didn't know there were so many, but there are, and it's madness. In addition to actual checking for taste, it can check for grape varieties, mostly used for quality control and checking for any possible contamination. It can also do specific brands or geographical origins. And here, from one of the studies I did reference, where did you go? It does not say it. Okay. I still have it on the sources, though. So, basically, if I can get my pointer device, this is the actual analyzer that takes the specimen that's put in this auto sampler. The sensor array here, this is a much larger picture. It has a bunch of these sensors with reference electrodes that look for specific compounds that you're trying to analyze. And it has a cool little stirrer thing that looks like a propeller, and it really looks cool. As you know, mix up the wine and whatever compounds they're looking for in the sensors. It gets measured by the analyzer, which is then hooked up all the way back to our cool computer monitor thing to actually do the specific data analysis. And now let me turn that off. Beautiful. There we go. And so there are actually different types of sensor technologies. If I conveniently go back to the sensors here, these are what we are talking about on this slide. The two big ones are potentiometric and voltammetric. The potentiometric, it's basically a potential that's created across the selective membrane that's measured, which obviously is dependent on the interaction between the electrode and the compounds in the wine. Now, I say solution because this is used also in lots of other instances in the food and beverage industry, but we're here for wine, and wine is great. So the potential is measured, let's go back a second again, across these sensors here with our reference electrode and the cool propeller stirrer. I'm not getting over that. It's really fun to me. Voltammetric, it's going to measure specific voltage, which is applied to the compounds in our wine that have the ability to either oxidize or reduce. We call that redox activity. And the two ways it does it is it can do cyclic pulse voltammetry, which means you press a button, it makes pulses of electricity with how many volts you want. It's like, okay, this is, I should really say, this is the reactivity of those compounds that have redox activity based on the electricity that's getting put in at these regular pulse intervals to cause these particular reactions and measure. We can also do specific voltage ranges, where if you know a specific voltage range where you want to see the redox activity reactions occur beforehand, right as the reaction begins, or while it's going on, that's where you would do the voltage ranges. And with voltammetric technology, you can also use different chemical modifiers to improve the sensitivity and selectivity of what you are looking for. Examples being phthalocyanines, I think CPs, there's a polymer involved, nanoparticles, or CNTs, and unfortunately, I do not remember off the top of my head what the CNT stands for. The next, I think, final technology for the electronic tongue is what are called bioelectric tongues. And these are biosensors with specificity towards certain compounds that provide more comprehensive information of the wine while obviously looking for those certain compounds. The two examples I found were phenol oxidases. They detect phenols. So tyrosinase, lactase, peroxidase. Or you can detect sugars with glucose oxidase or fructose dehydrogenase. Obviously, these are all enzymes. So the problem, with enzymes is they need specific conditions to be functional. And if you're outside of those conditions, the enzyme's not going to have optimal reactivity, be able to process the compounds in the wine to create the product you're looking for in order to actually perform these measurements for the bioelectric tongues. Now, what exactly is an electronic nose? It is an instrument capable of recognizing these simple or complex odors using different electrochemical sensors with partial specificity along with a pattern recognition system designed to mimic the olfactory receptors in our noses, which also comes with the fun portion of weak selectivity, cross-sensitivity, and non-specific determination. We think we smell things, they're actually different things. It's better than a human nose because it can detect different compounds earlier, but it's still on its own, it's not 100% foolproof. And Just like the electronic tongue, the electronic nose can check for quality control, aging, and even fraudulence in wines if they've been altered. I've seen studies where they look for any contamination with possibly water, methanol, other compounds that indicate, oh, this isn't actually the wine it is, it's actually this lesser quality wine. Now, the first technology we'll talk about with the electronic nose is the metal oxide sensors, because they are the most common technology. But there are a lot of problems. Yeah, I mean, you see the list there. I mean, temperature, humidity, problem with accuracy, excess power demand, uh, sulfur, weak acid toxicity, limited sensor coatings. And the challenge of using a metal oxide sensor is that you have to quickly distinguish what you're looking for while avoiding all the myriad of problems due to metal oxide sensors. So, yeah, they're common, but oh my goodness, are they not great. So, what has recently been done about that is more development has been going to colorimetric sensors, which are chemical dyes that are sensitive to food odors, that are coordinated with their own mechanism, mostly acid-base interactions. If anyone remembers from general chemistry, acid-base titrations, you have this indicator that a certain pH, even a pOH, you get the color from the pH or pOH indicator saying, oh, yay, we've achieved the pH, pOH of this reaction. It is completed. There's also double pi molecular complexation. That's mostly for, the pi bonding between compounds. Van der Waals interactions, which are just weak intermolecular forces in the compounds themselves, and adsorption. But thank goodness they remove humidity as a problem. They are also simple and low cost. And there are a bunch of dyes for the materials that are being looked for. So here is a picture of one of the electronic noses. This is a colorimetric electronic nose that was found by these particular people doing this study here. The wine goes into the reaction chamber. You have colorimetric sensors before and after that go into a scanner, and it creates, I guess I would call this, it says here RGB difference images. It kind of looks almost like Braille, to me at least. I mean, you can kind of make out sort of, let me get the laser pointer. You can sort of make out some kind of a letter somewhere, and these are unique for all of the compounds you're looking for. So I don't believe you're going to have any repeat images for different compounds. I would, of course, have to do more research for that, but I'm pretty sure that this RGB difference image is going to be unique for every compound you're looking for. And so now we're going to go into the question of, are these technologies, are these analyzers any good? Am I in danger of being replaced on YouTube? So, as I was doing my research, there are a lot of studies. There's actually been, I think the earliest study I could find indicated that there's been work going on this since the 1980s. And I don't remember if it was in California, if it was France, a different winemaking region for analysis. But there are a lot of studies, and the article that I read a couple weeks ago made me think, oh, this is like really new stuff. This ain't really that new. It's a lot older than I expected. But the short answer is yes, using an electronic nose and electronic tongue, they are good. The problem is you have to really use them in tandem in order to get the best, most complete wine description. And even then, the problem is, as humans, we're weird in that depending on our mood, our psychological mental thinking, for example, I'm on vacation. And when I'm on vacation, I like to visit the local wineries and vineyards wherever I'm at. And I do a couple tastings. Actually, I do a lot more than a couple tastings. But, I'm visiting at least 2, possibly 3 vineyards. I'm tasting a flight of 5, 6, maybe sometimes 7 wines at each of those locations. And, I'm on vacation. I'm more relaxed, if you will. I'm not worried about all the other stuff that I'm thinking about in my life. So, wine's gonna taste different when you're in a relaxed vacation setting compared to your daily life grind struggle. It just does. Best example I can give you are the southern wines I've had, where I've gone, in Arkansas, Tennessee. I try these wines. Oh, they're good while I'm on vacation. I bring them back. Sometime, they do get aged over, a few months, 3 or 4 months. I taste them officially for the channel, and oh my golly, it's bad. It is. It is literally like gasoline, and it is a nightmare. So, humans, like, the analyzers are not going to be like perfect human beings. That being said, if let's go back to the vacation wine tasting example, I'm going to 2 or 3 wineries in a day. There's anywhere between 5 and 7 wines at each winery vineyard. That adds up. That really does. Not just for, oh, hey, I need to actually drive afterwards, but also for the wine palate, where, after, I think it's about 5 or 6 wines, if you don't have something to eat to kind of clear that palate out, you're going to get what's called human sense fatigue. It's mostly, you can get in your nose, but I mostly see it with my tongue. So when I'm tasting wines after 5 or 6, I'll start noticing, hey, these kind of taste the same. So even though I have a Cabernet Sauvignon, a Pinot Noir, I gotta think, Tempranillo, they all start tasting the same after a while. And they clearly are not the same. There's no doubt about it. But when you've had, even 5 or 6 tastings, that can really throw you off looking for very specific compounds. At least as a human in a human panel, that is where the fatigue comes in. So these analyzers remove that human sense fatigue, and they can find these specific compounds without being like, oh my gosh, I've had all of this wine today. It is not good. Oof. I may need an Uber driver. Stuff like that. Also, any personal biases. I don't like champagne. I really do not. I don't like bubbles in my wine. I'm not sorry. The only exception will probably be non-alcoholic wines because you kind of need something. But champagne wine, it don't do it for me. So that's also another instance at least one example anyway, of electronic nose, electronic tongue. Boom, analyze that. And at least in this one study here at the bottom, they were able to take a bunch of Riesling wines, and they were able to determine any bacterial contamination with the electronic nose and the electronic tongue. I believe they did it over a 42-day period, and the analyzers started finding the contamination in about 7 days, whereas the human panel, quote, experts, it took the full 42 days for them to actually notice, oh, hey, there's something, wrong with this wine. Now, if you are storing your wines, I don't imagine people are storing their wines for, 6 weeks, because that's basically what 42 days is. I mean, I store my wines, it's a good few months before I even actually have them. These days a lot more, but that's a different story. So you want to really be able, if you can, especially if you have a wine collection that is particularly expensive, especially if you're going through the fermentation process, you want to be able to have these analyzers to make sure that your expensive wine is still good, for one thing, because that's a lost investment, and that's just going to be a nightmare. And that your fermentation process is fine. There's no bacterial contamination from the barrels that you're aging the wine in, any fermentation tanks, anything that gets into the wine that just causes problems, we're not here for, because we like our high quality wine. At least I do, anyway. So there is that. And these are some of the sources that I used specifically for this presentation. Thank you guys so much for listening. Maybe one day I'll actually get my face cam onto these presentations. One day. Couldn't tell you when one day is going to be, but one day we will get there. And so I will leave all of you with that. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And I will see you guys on the next wine lecture, whenever that will be. Have a good day, everybody.